We wake up and we hear. Growing up with children and, learning to speak properly, you never realize that the hearing is so important. It can be so involved.
I started realizing when I was teaching children in public schools with various degrees of hearing loss, with parents who had different ideas about what they wanted to have as the educational goals for their children, I started figuring out that all of these parents didn't get the same information, and it became very important to me to make sure that the parents started to have unbiased information given to them.
The deaf community is not just about sign language, it's also about oral and spoken language, it's about human speech, and it's about hearing loss, hearing aids. We are diverse.
I think I was a little closer if you use an onion as an example, the layers, and they say that, the center of the onion is the deaf community, deaf, culturally deaf. It was the attitude towards deafness. Some of my sisters, their attitudes toward deafness wasn't that great. That was my opinion.
We are more on their trust sign, we are more on their human speech. There may be some who may hang on to that mentality of, the culture, but that's the culture, but that's not the community. We have different cultures within the community.
The next layer would be a sibling or a deaf child or a hearing child of a deaf adult, and then it goes out from there to where you can't get in that center. And I thought, a cochlear implant? Okay, you've got to be kidding me. I'm thinking, you really want me to think about getting a cochlear implant? My answer was flat out no. Hell no.
So I feel like I really appreciate deaf culture for what it is, but I'm not part of the deaf culture because I didn't grow up with it. I don't sign well, but I can interact with them. I can share their values, so I'm able to understand well enough what they believe in. I may not agree with them, but I can argue with them, what the ideas are.
I'm thinking, you want me to get a cochlear implant so that I could hear my own children's voice. I mean, that cut deep. As a deaf person, her perspective and the way she approached me with that hurt. I didn't view it as a disability.
We were in shock. We were. Certainly the test had to be wrong, etc. And they would retest Tanner, and he flunked it again. So we knew that he had a hearing loss, but we did not know to the extent.
But the shock hit in then, and the denial right then, probably within the hospital.
They would test to see if I had any hearing loss. And of course I did. And then that's when my parents were shocked and to find out and very upset with the other experts saying that I had this and this and my hearing was perfectly normal. I'm very grateful that they got a second opinion, a third opinion, just to make sure.
But I do know that when she found out I was deaf, she was heartbroken. She had a hard time dealing with it. She told me that she wanted to drive off a bridge. She felt like it was the end of her life because what she knew of deafness was that no functioning, people, which was not the case. There are quite a few deaf people that are successful.
Of course there was denial because, you want the best for your kid. You don't want your kid to be any different than, anybody else.
We would hear the stories from the audioverbal therapists that a lot of the parents just ignore that there's, no hearing loss with their child, that it's not a problem.
There's some parents that do go through the denial of it and don't take that next step and get their kids' hearing fixed.
The hardest thing we've ever done, I believe, was to leave Ashley that first day. The house parent was wonderful, and she just assured us that everything would be fine. But when we got back in the car to start home, it was just, our hearts were just broken.
I tell you that it's heartbreaking to watch him come to you with his hearing aids and say, my battery doesn't work anymore. And you change the batteries and he can't hear. You know, I mean, that's a heartbreaking thing because you want to be able to fix it.
So I just remember being kind of confused, being angry maybe at times too, because being as though I couldn't fit in, you know, in certain areas, I remember just kind of pushing it and tucking it away, you know, to where I couldn't share this with the people that I could talk to verbally, and I didn't want to share it with my parents because it was about them.
But as far as like, I think the pain comes from grieving, anger. I mean, yeah, you don't want, you get mad, but it's not like we're mad at God or Tanner
For
or
us.
genetics, our parents. They're the ones that, you know, made us. A little bit. We can be mad at them. Came from the Hosley
Yeah,
side.
it came from her side.
I went through different stages, of course. It's at some point in time it's pointed out that your mom is different. Why does your mom talk different? Why can she not hear what we're saying? So I'm sure most children of deaf adults go through the stages of maybe a little bit of embarrassment. I wish mom could hear. You know, I wish people didn't pay attention to the way she talks.
We went through some big time emotions as far as why our baby.
They are also dealing with, are they deaf because this is something I did? Is this because I smoked pot in high school? Or, I mean, these parents, some of them were having so much just so much struggle because they were grieving because something was wrong with their child.
You know, I became frustrated and was kind of, I guess, rebellious at a certain time in my life because there became a point where I was angry that my parents couldn't hear. I was frustrated because I didn't know where I belonged. I didn't know where I fit in. There was some depression there, I guess, in a sense of I turned towards other outlets. You know, I remember smoking a cigarette for the first time, or, you know, and it was like, oh, something here that might help me forget about where I don't fit in, you know. And so it took me a long time to realize that I wasn't alone out there. And
All these people had already told me, you can't speak. You're not good enough to speak. And they constantly made fun of me. And I would go home very upset, cry, get depressed, talk to my parents about it. And it got to the point where they just said, you know, it might be a good idea if you start joining organization, club, sport, or do something.
So she wrote her daddy a letter. And she said, Daddy, I'm not only getting deaf, but I'm getting blind also. When we got home, he explained to us, to me, his feelings when he read that letter. Of course, there's no way to explain how you will feel when you hear that your daughter is gonna be deaf and blind.
The speaking thing, I think that was more hurtful than anything else. Because I had already accepted the fact that I did have a hearing loss, but I couldn't accept the fact that I sounded different from everyone else. And that's what upset me the most.
You go through the process of you're mad again, but you've got to accept it.
as a child, some of the struggles, I think, with acceptance in my childhood with everybody else in the neighborhood that I was around could just say, hey Mom, I'm going to the store. Hey Mom, I'm going to play with Joey. And I had to flick the lights or bang on the floor or throw a pillow at my mom just to get their attention.
Accepting her deafness, I think, was just a process of growing from youth, teenager, young adult, senior citizen, total acceptance as a senior citizen.
You go through that grieving cycle over and over. I mean, you know, you may skip the shock and the denial, but you're always.
I think I grieve when a situation happens.
Yeah.
Like when he says he doesn't want to wear his hearing aids anymore. When will I outgrow them? You know, now he's just more inquisitive and asking questions. And, you know, you answer the questions and then you can walk away. Oh.
Yeah, we try to hold it together, but then we leave. It's usually like at nighttime when we're putting him in bed, saying our prayers and all that stuff, and he'll bring it up, and then we'll all strong and like, oh, you're okay, and then we'll go in our bedroom and just lose it.
Tanner says things sometimes they just don't work like they're supposed to when you're being made, and he understands it.
When you're a child of a deaf adult, without even realizing it, you're spending your life doing advocating. They don't talk to her, they talk to us. I mean, this wonderful woman is standing there trying to have a conversation with you, and they're talking to me as if she doesn't even exist. That happens in today's world. They don't talk to the deaf person, they talk to us. So you spend your whole life convincing people that, yes, she can sign her own medical forms, or she's perfectly capable of reading the instructions and doing this. You don't have to give it to me to read for her. She understands the Bible, yes. You know, she understands the same things that we understand. She just doesn't hear.
It was destined for me to become that little young interpreter, because now I'm an advocate for the deaf. I've always been an advocate for the deaf because of the life that I grew up in.
My parents would fight for me in the school, public school. They would make sure that the teachers were doing what they were supposed to be doing. The IEP yearly, they were big advocacy on making sure that the exceptional children got the education that they needed.
Time is very important, and to listen to the people, the resources that come to you in the very beginning, if it is through infant hearing screening, to accept that there could possibly be a hearing loss and to jump on it, because, you know, the faster that your child has on hearing aids, the better for them.
I said I was born deaf. I was just born that way. That's normal to me. Being deaf is normal, you know. It's not something that I'm struggling with. It's something that's me. That's Daisy. And I looked at her just, you know, to see what expression she would have with that. And she said, born deaf. Wow. She said, oh, I'm sorry. And I thought, do I look sad? I look happy. Look at my face. See my smile? I'm happy. I'm deaf, yes. I'm happy with who I am. And she just looked as if she couldn't understand that. I said, I'm fine. I can communicate. Yeah, there's a disability there, but, you know, and I explained a little bit about the lifestyle. But, I mean, it was just, I think there was just a lot of confusion in her mind of how she perceived a deaf person. And having seen a real live deaf person, she was just shocked, I think, for me to say, hey, I'm happy, I'm fine.
There's nothing different that we would have done or do or...
It could be a lot worse. It goes back to that. It really could.